Welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book, which one of the two, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. Rua do Ouvidor is the beating heart of Rio de Janeiro, a living newspaper where politics are born and careers are made. Here, news travels fast, and every topic, big or small, gets its time in the sun. A serious editorial walks hand in hand with a fashion column, and an advertisement lives in peace with the latest fiction serial. So, it's no surprise that this story begins right here. This is the story of Dr. Daniel E., a man of 28, graduated at 22, and recently returned from Europe. He studied law, yes, but until now, he has never taken on a single case. And if you look at the way he lives, it's clear he's not likely to become much of a lawyer anytime soon. And yet, he's not without talent, nor friends, nor powerful allies, three things that can open any door in this world, if fate is kind. But for all that, Daniel had neither the taste nor the calling to be a lawyer. He was further from that life than the North Pole is from the South. Let's be honest, the real problem with Daniel, the thing that held him back not just from the law, but from any kind of active life, was laziness. That great force of the human spirit, discovered by La Rochefoucauld, the one Madame de Schonberg called un sentiment, si caché et si véritable. Laziness stole his ambition and cooled his passions. And since, luckily, he had money of his own, he could afford to skip any career that asked for hard work or even a little focus. Daniel didn't care for public life. To him, the fall of a government meant no more than the end of a good cigar. He had never read a single speech from Congress. He knew the Constitution only because he once skimmed it in college. He never voted and had no plans to start. Daniel's life had no great ambitions or deep thoughts pulling his attention. He cared little for the struggles people went through to chase what he saw as worthless goals. He never tried to explain why he felt this way, because that would have taken effort, and effort was something he simply didn't have. Life is like a bus, he used to say. Everyone pays their fare and gets off at the first hole they find. So in a bus, you just sit quiet. Let me sit quiet too. It was clear that his laziness mixed easily with a kind of sleepy philosophy, creating the deepest calm anyone his age could ever feel. His life was peaceful, flat, and always the same. Not even the big storms that shake the sea, nor the dark moods that come from being surrounded by mountains. His was the calm of a lake and the quiet rhythm of a flat land. Maybe he had the seeds of great passions inside him, but nothing ever made them grow. Daniel lived on Rua do Ouvidor, and his world never went beyond Bernardo's house or Garnier's bookstore. He sometimes went to Andaroí, Botafogo, or Tijuca, but those trips felt like going to Buenos Aires or Lisbon rare and not very exciting. The Rua do Ouvidor was his real home. If the Rua do Ouvidor didn't exist, he would say, we would have to invent it. After that street, only one other place truly mattered to him, his bedroom. He dressed well, not because he cared, but because he didn't care enough to dress badly. His tailors dressed him, and he wore whatever they gave him. He went to the theater just to pass the time. He walked in without curiosity and left without emotion. No one remembered ever seeing him angry, not with his slaves, not with his friends. In fact, he mixed them up so much that he would say he saw a friend in every slave, and a slave in every friend. Since finishing school, there was no record of him ever reading a whole book, no matter what it was. No one knew if he even remembered the titles of the books he read at night, just to fall asleep. Daniel had a certain spark, as I mentioned before, and could have gone far not just in politics or law, but also in writing or even in love. He was the kind of young man who girls at 15 dream about, tall, quiet, and strikingly handsome. Yet, strangely, he never fell in love, nor did anyone truly love him back. He lived with his father, and together they made up the whole family. The difference between them was clear. One full of energy, the other always calm. Old Marcos had been a businessman for decades. He built his fortune through trade and kept working, not because he needed to, but simply to stay busy. To him, work wasn't a way to get somewhere, it was the goal itself. When Daniel, now and then, tried to argue the opposite, his father would just smile and say, "You're right, my clever boy, you're right. I can't say you're wrong, so I'll just keep being wrong on my own terms." Another difference, Marcos was always cheerful, while Daniel smiled only once in a while, and not out of bitterness, but more from laziness. Still, since he never got angry, there was nothing sharp about him. He had gone to 2 or 3 parties in his life, but never danced, played games, or even stayed for supper. He just watched, smoked, and exchanged a few words here and there. And he never stayed longer than an hour. This was Dr. Daniel, the same man readers will now find standing on Rua do Ouvidor, right in front of a fashion shop. Chapter 2. It was 5 years ago, during the time of the legislative sessions. Rua do Ouvidor was, back then, the main attraction in the capital city. There, you'd find congressmen and onlookers, politicians by trade and by passion. Standing near the entrance of the shop where we see Daniel is a pair of deputies deep in conversation. They're discussing an official question that will come up the next day. Daniel, leaning lazily against the counter on the street side, smokes a cigar with little interest and glances absently at a few women walking by. Now and then, he catches a few broken words from the political talk. The only effect it has on him is a faint smile. After some time, a short young man stops in front of Daniel. He looks about 30, neither handsome nor ugly, but dressed with clear elegance. I would call him a dandy, though the brand new French term petit crevé fits him better. "Goodbye, Daniel," he says. "How are you, Valadares? What are you up to?" "I'm just killing time until dinner." "It's 3:30, isn't it? Want to join me?" "Why not?" Valadares leans against the counter too, adjusts his pince-nez glasses, and starts watching the people passing by. The two remain silent for a few minutes. Meanwhile, the conversation between the two deputies grows more intense. So much so that Daniel quickly turns his head when one of them pulls a paper from his pocket to read something aloud. Daniel smirks. "Who are those 2 guys?" Valadares asks. "Deputies," Daniel replies. Another pause follows. But Valadares breaks it again. "Did you know a brew ran off?" he says. "Why?" "He got caught stealing from the boss' cash box. And since he didn't want to face any shame, he decided it was smarter to just disappear. Daniel's only response is to shake the ash off his cigar. Valadares continues. You don't even know what started all this? He asks. Was it Mariquinhas? Exactly. It was coming. You'll run off too one day. Me? Yes. You. But I have my own cash box to play with. Valadares looked at the ground for a moment, then said, You can't run away just from Rio de Janeiro. You can run from the whole world. Daniel raised an eyebrow. So you mean suicide? Yes, Valadares replied. That's exactly what I mean. Daniel laughed softly. Then, I was a fool. Valadares smiled. When you finally leave this planet, you'll know it's because of Luisina. Don't talk badly about her, Daniel said. Oh, I know she's an angel, Daniel replied. But even so, you're ready to throw your life away for her. I think it's natural. Valadares paused, then said, Wait until I tell you something. What is it? Daniel asked. I'm getting married. Daniel blinked. To her? No, you idiot, Valadares said, laughing. To someone we both know. One of the Zebra girls. Which one? Daniel asked. Amelia. Daniel thought for a second. I think they're distant cousins of mine. Valadares grinned. Now tell me, can a man who's about to get married still think about killing himself? Daniel smiled, tapping his cane lightly on the ground. But that's exactly my point. Getting married is a way of running away from the world. A wedding blessing is just a formal goodbye. So if you're stepping into the grave of marriage, it's because of Luisina. Her moods no longer match how you feel. It's safe to say these few words were the longest speech Daniel had ever made. And just as quickly as he spoke, he went silent again. He didn't answer any of the many reasons Valadares gave for marrying Amelia, or breaking up with Luisa. Please forgive me for putting those two names together in the same sentence, a bride and a courtesan. But they were linked in Valadares' mind too. I'm only telling the story as it was. Valadares had just finished listing all the reasons for his marriage when a carriage stopped in front of the store. A servant opened the door and two women stepped out, one older, still elegant, and a young woman about 20 years old. One of the deputies who stood near the door recognized them as soon as the carriage stopped. He rushed over and offered his hand. First the older woman stepped out, then the younger. Together, they walked into the shop. Daniel had a habit, like an old friend of mine, of checking out women's feet. A woman, he once told me, is a book. Her foot is the index. And right there, you can already see he had another strange habit, always spouting sayings and wise lines. Because of this foot obsession, Daniel couldn't tell if the girl was pretty or not, or if she was dark or fair. All he knew was that she had a beautiful foot. When he finally tried to catch a glimpse of her face, she had already gone into the store. He didn't even try to look through the glass. He just turned to Valadares and asked, Who are those people? They're from the B family. B was a congressman from the north. Valadares looked through the window. Look, Daniel, look how pretty she is. Daniel turned his head and saw for himself that the girl was indeed pretty. But he didn't say a word. The two women didn't stay long. A few minutes later, they came back out and got into their carriage. The girl stood just beside Daniel. He looked at her again, hoping to confirm his first impression. At that moment, their eyes met. In the light, she looked even prettier than before. But he didn't have time to enjoy it. She made a face, full of contempt, turned her back to him, and walked toward the carriage, where the door was open. The older woman got in after her, and off they went. Daniel looked inside and saw the girl chatting with the older one, clearly not thinking about anything else. All of this happened fast, and Valadares missed the whole thing. Daniel, a bit annoyed by the girl's attitude, smiled and pulled out his pocket watch. "Shall we go have dinner?" "Let's go," said Valadares. As they were about to walk down to the English hotel where Valadares always had dinner, Daniel spotted a garter on the sidewalk. He bent down and picked it up. "Could it be the girl's?" Valadares asked. "Evil be to the one who thinks evil of it," Daniel joked with a smile, putting the garter into his pocket. And then off they went to dinner. Daniel finished his dinner and pushed his plate away, the conversation around him light and casual. No one mentioned the ribbon again, nor the girl from the north. It was as if the whole thing had never happened. But when the coffee arrived, curiosity got the better of him. "Where do they live?" he asked, stirring his cup. "Matacavalos," they told him. "A quiet neighborhood, modest but tidy." He nodded, said nothing more, and let the topic drop. Still, as the afternoon wore on, something about her stayed with him just a little. It wasn't much, just a flicker in his mind, like a shadow passing through a window. But by night time, whatever it was had faded completely. Back home, he walked into his study, tired and distracted. He pulled the ribbon from his pocket and dropped it carelessly into a drawer of his desk. That was that. He didn't think of her again. Chapter 3. The ladies from the carriage lived in Matacavalos. The older one was the sister of a northern congressman. Her name was Madalena, and she was the widow of an army officer. Augusta, her daughter, was nearly 20 years old, and according to everyone who knew her, the most beautiful girl in the province. But people didn't only talk about her looks. Augusta stood out mostly because of her charm and elegant manners, which were made even more striking by a certain air of pride. When Dr. B, the young woman's uncle and the old lady's brother, was elected to Congress, he thought it would be a good idea to bring his relatives along to the imperial capital. Madalena accepted the offer with great excitement, while Augusta simply agreed. The trip was made, and at the time this story begins, they had already been in the city for 2 months, having arrived 1 month before the Congress session started. Augusta caused a sensation wherever she went. Her beauty, grace, and manners impressed everyone. These qualities were not unusual in the city's women, but in Augusta, they carried a special touch, a unique stamp that made her different from all the others. A bold young man, deeply impressed by Augusta's charm, told her one night that he had never imagined the provinces could produce such a masterpiece, and that she must certainly be the queen of all provincial girls. "Nature makes up for everything," Augusta replied. "It's possible that women like me are rare in the provinces, But men like you, sir, are certainly extremely rare. This answer was overheard by one of the young man's friends, who quickly spread the words around, and soon everyone was talking about what the beautiful girl from the provinces had said. "She has spirit too," said one man. "It seems so." The victim of her comment was present and muttered, "What a shame, because she really is very pretty." "She's all the more impressive," replied the first man. "And to sum up in one phrase both her beauty and her sharp tongue," he added, "let's call her the Medici lioness." The name didn't stick. Out of the 5 boys present, only the one who had come up with it knew about the Venus de Medici, a key detail, to get the joke. Still, everyone laughed, the kind of awkward laugh that doesn't really mean anything. Augusta's reputation only grew from there, thanks to 1 or 2 other strange moments like that first one. So whenever people saw her, they felt 2 things at once: fascination and fear. They admired her like you'd admire a beautiful panther, beautiful, yes, but dangerous. None of this background was known to the 2 young men we met on Rua do Ouvidor. Valadares, the only one who had ever heard of the family, only knew them by sight, having seen them once at someone else's house. But if instead of heading to the English hotel, they had walked into the store after the carriage left, they would have overheard this quiet conversation between the 2 congressmen. "How are things going with Augusta?" the older one asked. "The same as always," replied the younger. "No hope then?" "Hope? Always. I told you before, and I'll say it again. I want to be a state minister, or an ambassador, or something like that. Not just because those positions are naturally appealing for a political career, but mainly because maybe then I could win Augusta's favor." "You told me that once before," the other said, "but I thought it was just a joke." "If I remember right, you said it laughing. This time, though, you're serious. Are you really telling me your biggest political ambition is just to impress her?" In love." His friend smiled and replied, "A new kind. A politician because of love. Sounds great in a novel, but in Parliament? Come on." "Ridiculous, I know." "Exactly. And yet, it's true." They both fell silent for a moment. "Luis," said the older man, who will call by that name since age gives me the right to choose seats easier this way. "How can we count on you if your actions depend entirely on a young woman's whims?" "I've still been a loyal and active ally up to now," replied Louise. "Do you think I go up to the podium without true conviction? No, I go because I believe in what I say. But yes, sometimes I let myself get carried away. I admit, part of that fire comes from wanting to build a strong position for her." "I don't see how that works," the older man said. "I do," said Louise. "I think this way I can finally win her pride over." The old man shook his head and tightened his lips, clearly unhappy with what he had just heard. They didn't talk much more after that. Luis left for the hotel where he lived, and the old man went to have dinner with one of the leaders of the opposition. Before saying goodbye, the older man reminded the young man, "So, tomorrow is the big questioning in the house." "Tomorrow," Luis confirmed. Chapter 4. 8 days after those scenes, Daniel was having lunch alone. At home. 8 was 11 o'clock. and old Marcos had his lunch at 8 when Valadares arrived, cheerful and red-faced. Daniel offered him something to eat. "I'll accept, because I haven't eaten yet, and to be honest, I wasn't planning to. I had no appetite at all. But maybe being with you will change that. Is the old man here?" "No." Valadares sat at the table and started eating. For the first few minutes, they exchanged only a few short words. Daniel finished first and lit a cigar. "What's new?" he asked. "Something big," Valadares replied. "I can guess." "You'll see. Something unbelievable, and yet true. Something new not for you, of course, since I already told you part of it. Though back then, I was a bit vague. Let's hear it then." "I'm getting married." "Oh. In a month from now." "Glad to hear that." Valadares crossed his fork and accepted the cup of coffee the servant handed him. "I'm marrying Amelia Sibra. So now, we'll be family. Want me to tell you the truth? No matter how strong a man is, the idea of marriage always brings a lot of worry. Every morning, when I get out of bed, I ask myself if it's real that soon. I'll be forever tied to a woman. Forever. Me, who never gave love more than 2 months of life. What do you think about it?" "Nothing much." Valadares quickly drank his coffee, pushed his chair back, and lit a cigar too. "I'm throwing a ball, you know," he said to Daniel. "And I really hope you'll come. Do me that favor." Daniel nodded in agreement. "I think a lot of people will come," Valadares went on. "I already have 2 ministers and 4 senators confirmed. Those are invitations from my future father-in-law. I just need to take care of the younger crowd. By the way, we'll see the girl from the garter there." "What girl?" "Oh, come on, the one who dropped her garter on Ouvidor Street." Daniel blinked, trying to recall. "Oh," he finally said, remembering the incident on Ouvidor Street. Valadares asked, "What did you do with the garter?" "I think I left it on the desk," Daniel replied. They got up from the table. As they walked toward his office, Daniel opened the desk and found the garter that Augusta had lost. "Rascal," Valadares laughed. "You kept it." "By accident," Daniel answered. He closed the desk again. Since the day he saw Augusta, it was the first time she came back to his mind. Daniel remembered the way she had looked away, showing nothing but cold pride, before stepping into the carriage. If laziness truly kills all passions, as some say, then it must be said that it does so slowly, not all at once. Daniel still had pride left, plenty of it, and it resisted the slow work of forgetfulness. Thinking of Augusta now felt like a wound to his ego. His self-respect hurt from remembering that moment on Ouvidor Street. "So the girl with the garter is coming to your ball?" "She is. My father-in-law invited her." "Father-in-law? I still find that strange. It feels like I'm moving to another country." "My father-in-law. I never thought I'd call anyone that. And yet, it's exactly what will happen to you." Daniel shrugged. "To me?" he said. "If the whole world waits for me to get married, we might as well say the human race is over." "That's exactly what I said." "I don't care what you said." "You'll see. You'll see." Valadares left soon after. But instead of going home to his fiancée, he went straight to someone else's house, someone already mentioned in this story. You may have noticed that during the whole talk about marriage, Valadares barely mentioned his future wife. Unlike most fiancés, he had not given her even 5 minutes of real attention while talking to his friend. It was neither more nor less than one of those arrangements politely called a marriage of convenience, 2 words that seem like enemies, forced together by society. Valadares had reached the crossroads of a scoundrel's life. On one path, a marriage of convenience. On the other, total ruin. It's not easy for a man like him to find a woman willing to marry him, but Valadares did. Daniel had these same thoughts after parting ways with Valadares. As he walked, he reflected on the situation so deeply that this story would grow much longer if I tried to explain all his thoughts. But Daniel's life was different from Valadares'. Daniel was, above all, a man who cared only for himself. Marriage would bring him worries he didn't want. The comforts of home life meant little to him. When old Marcos heard the news that Valadares was getting married, he hinted to his son that it might be a good example to follow. "Oh, why not?" Daniel replied, offering his father a cigar. Chapter 5. Valadares getting married caused quite a stir in certain social circles. At first, people didn't believe it. But soon enough, there was no denying it. The bohemian, the troublemaker, the reckless Valadares was actually settling down. Some called it a scandal, others a miracle. "By what right?" asked little Luza. "The one we already met. Do they take away the pearls from our necklace?" She wasn't far off. There was a necklace, and Valadares had been its finest pearl. The young men who were already deep into the pleasures of love and nightlife thought the groom had lost his mind. Although, deep down, some believed the marriage made sense after all. The bride came with a fortune. Despite all the gossip and even a few bets, Valadares got married. The party at the father-in-law's house was amazing. As promised, Daniel the Grump came too, along with his father, who served as one of the wedding witnesses. Valadares' bride was beautiful, but also very clever. And even though on that special day, all the women looked more or less the same, it wasn't hard to see she was a real gem. It was clear she had married to gain the freedom to go out and enjoy life. And she had landed in good hands. Daniel, as usual, didn't dance. He preferred to watch others dance. At 10 o'clock, the family of Congressman B arrived. With them came Luis, the same oppositionist who had started a debate on Ouvidor Street. Augusta looked absolutely radiant. Her beauty combined grace and dignity in a way that seemed to shine even brighter under the lights of the ballroom. You could say her beauty multiplied 100 times indoors, but would fade a little in daylight. That means if Daniel had found her beautiful on Ouvidor Street, he now thought she was absolutely divine in the Zebra home. When she entered the room, everyone noticed. People bowed slightly without even realizing it, like they were pulled by some invisible force. She moved like a classic Venus, and her presence alone seemed to command respect. Daniel was leaning against the door through which Augusta entered the dance hall. He didn't bow. He didn't even move. Augusta seemed to recognize the young man's face. She stared at him for a few seconds, then quickly looked away, repeating that same cold, dismissive gesture that had struck Daniel so hard. He wondered to himself, why the cold look? He had never met her before, nor had he ever tried to offend her. So where did this quiet dislike come from? His curiosity and pride were both deeply hurt. Augusta entered the room on her uncle's arm. Luis escorted Madalena beside her. When Valadares saw Augusta arrive, he walked over to Daniel. "I just had an idea," Valadares said to his friend. "Today is not the day for ideas," Daniel replied. "Even so, hear me out. Marry Augusta." Before Daniel could answer, the music began, and the conversation stopped. Daniel moved to a spot where he could watch her. Augusta danced with Valadares. For most of the dance, their eyes never met. But near the end, by chance or not, she turned and looked straight at him. Their eyes locked for a moment. It felt like a silent question passed between them. This time, Daniel was the first to look away. He turned and left the room. He walked into a smaller room nearby and dropped onto a couch. He was alone. He checked his watch, looked up at the ceiling, adjusted his gloves, fixed his tie, stood up, paced a few steps, then sat back down. He waited like this until the dance ended. Soon the room filled with couples coming in from the ballroom. Though Daniel knew how to behave in society, he hated the noise of silk dresses brushing past, the clicking of fans, the soft buzz of happy conversations. These sounds only made him feel more alone and out of place. He began to feel bored and restless. If nothing changed soon, he would be in bed within the hour. He stood up and started walking toward the ballroom again, when his father appeared, walking with Madalena. Marcos called him over. Daniel approached. The old man introduced his son to Augusta's mother. Daniel took the introduction with cold detachment. But Madalena was so warm and kind that it was impossible not to respond. So the three of them talked for a while. A few minutes later, Valadares arrived, offering his arm to Augusta, and the group grew bigger. Another introduction followed, this one more formal for the two new people. No words were exchanged beyond the simple greeting Daniel offered Augusta, and she accepted with a small nod, her eyes glancing briefly at his feet before looking away. There was no doubt about it. These two did not like each other. Her pride didn't match his arrogance. It was like the old saying, hard against hard. Yet, for all their dislike, Daniel could not help but admire Augusta's beauty, and Augusta could not hide her disdain for Daniel's seriousness. That admiration only pushed them further apart. Because admiration is a kind of submission. And every time they had met before, each had made it clear they believed themselves better than the other. But Augusta looked at Luis differently. With him, she showed something close to pity. It was as if she felt sorry for him. When he spoke to her, she answered with kindness and softness. Yet that softness and kindness came with a tone of superiority, unlike the respectful affection Luis showed as her political suitor. And still, his only crime had been to fall for her and to ask her hand in marriage, which she gently refused, saying it was better they remain just friends. Luis didn't dance. He shared Daniel's belief that dancing was a pleasure best enjoyed with the eyes. After about half an hour, Valadares approached Daniel once again, urging him to at least dance one quadrille. Daniel refused. As they argued this very important matter, Augusta passed by. Valadares stopped her and said with great eagerness, Dr. Daniel asked me to request this quadrille for him. Daniel bit his lip in silence. Augusta answered by looking at Valadares. Valadares had just asked Augusta for a dance, but she refused. "I don't dance anymore," she said. "Why not?" he asked. "I'm tired," she replied. Daniel stepped in, trying to smooth things over. "Valadares offered you a compliment just now," he said. "Something I never dared to hope for, or even imagine." "I'm tired," Augusta repeated, this time more sharply. She took Valadares' arm and walked away, leaving Daniel behind. It was clear she wasn't interested in hearing what he had to say. About 15 minutes later, Daniel left the ball. No one saw him go. Chapter 6. Augusta had started to feel something like hatred toward him. Could that be love's way of growing? 15 days had passed since the events we've just described, when Augusta sat at the piano in Mata Cavallo's house. She was playing absent-mindedly when Valadares' wife walked into the room. The young woman was finally enjoying the freedom she had hoped marriage would bring. "Where is your mother?" Amelia asked after they exchanged greetings and kisses. "She's inside." "I'll go call her." "I bet the kid already told her I'm here." "Come, sit down." Amelia sat and smiled at Augusta. "Don't you want to ask about my husband?" she said. "I was just about to. He's at work. One of the first things we agreed on was that I could go out whenever I wanted. I'm not a child who needs to follow her husband everywhere. That's not how it's done in Europe. Besides, I trust him completely. You look pale today. I didn't sleep much. Any worries?" "A headache." "What heat?" "Actually, it's a very hot day." Amelia waved her fan and looked around the room with that kind of nosy curiosity people often show when they enter a house for the first time. It was the kind of behavior that showed a total lack of manners. Augusta smiled at her. At that moment, Madalena entered the room. "Out for a walk already?" she said, kissing Amelia. "It's not too early. How is your husband?" "He's fine." "You must be very happy." "We are." "Oh, marriage is the best invention in the world. Why hasn't your daughter married yet?" "Because she hasn't found a groom." "That's easy to fix." "Not so easy," Augusta quickly added. "Besides, I'm not in a rush." "The sooner, the better," said Amelia. "Augusta will marry when she wants," Madalena said. "She could have one right now." "Oh, someone is already in love with her?" Augusta stood up and walked back to the piano to get her handkerchief. "Let's not talk about it," she said. Amelia also stood up. "Are you leaving already?" Madalena asked. Amelia looked at Augusta and said, "I need to go pick out some dresses. Would you like to come with me?" Augusta replied, "I can't." Amelia said, "Then why?" "Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't be too hard on people." Augusta thought for a moment and asked, "Why don't you come over for tea tonight?" Amelia answered, "I can't. I have to go with my husband to visit old Marcos." "Do you know him?" Madalena, who was listening, asked, Wasn't he the man who introduced us on your wedding night? Amelia said, That's right. We're related. He's very sick now. Madalena said, He looked perfectly fine before. Amelia explained, His son came to our house today to tell us about his illness. Madalena asked, Dr. Daniel? Amelia nodded. Yes. Then she said again, Goodbye, and left. That was the first time Augusta had heard the name Daniel since the ball. No matter the reason, hearing it made her feel shaken. Left alone in the living room, Augusta sat down at the piano and began to play a German piece, though her heart wasn't in it. Her mind was clearly somewhere else. After a while, her uncle arrived, and with him was Luis. Since his rejection in the province, this was the first time Luis accepted an invitation to dinner at B.'s house. It might have been a childish worry, if you asked him, but Luis felt it, and followed it without even thinking. Still, how could he say no to the old man's kind invitation? And more than that, how could he refuse the chance to spend time in the same house as Augusta? When the two politicians entered the room, Augusta had already stood up from the piano. Dinner was served right away. After dinner, Luis spent some time alone with Augusta. They talked about small things. She praised him for the applause he had received as a speaker. He listened with modesty, though it was clear he was happy to hear such words from her. Then he added, All those claps have only one real benefit for me. They help me get closer to what I want. Augusta asked, Do you have political ambitions? Luis answered, No. You know what my real ambition is. At that, Augusta became quiet and serious. Luis looked at her with a smile full of pain. Then he reached for her hand, but she pulled away quickly. I'm sorry, she said. I have things to do. As she turned to leave, Luis stepped forward. You're mistaken, Donna Augusta, he said. I didn't come here to talk about feelings I have no right to mention. I only wanted to ask your forgiveness, in case I ever hurt you with words about a love I can't control. I believe him not to blame either, she replied. Not on purpose, numero. Augusta took a step back and sat down. Listen, she said. I told you once that we could be good friends. Is that what you want? I accept, he said. That's already more than I deserve. But I still hope you might come to love me one day. That hope is useless. Maybe it is. But I still hold on to it. Augusta smiled. How proud she is, Luis thought. But the moment he had that thought, he felt ashamed. He smiled at her again, a smile full of quiet begging and regret. Augusta didn't notice. Outside, the sun was setting. The sadness of the hour matched the mood of the scene, a passionate heart next to a cold one. A man's whole life hanging on the indifference of a woman, his happiness or ruin depending on her pity. Some readers will feel for Luis, others will think him weak. It depends on how each person sees love. Proud people will say no man should keep asking for a woman's love. Once she has said numero, those are rules that sound good on paper. But anyone who understands the human heart will see, with sadness, how love can bring even a strong and honorable man to his knees. Luis had thought about this many times before. He often told himself he should walk away, but every time his heart refused to let go. Love, after all, is not decided by reason. it is ruled by feeling. Still, something about this meeting stayed with him. For the first time, he felt that chasing after Augusta's love might be more than just painful, it might be beneath him. And yet, he made a decision. He would fight his feelings. And he would wait. Louis said goodbye to Augusta shortly after and left. When Augusta was alone again, she took a deep breath. It was clear that Louis' presence had bothered her. Chapter 7. The illness took Marcos quickly. Just 2 days after Emilia's visit, the kind old man passed away, leaving behind a deep sense of loss in everyone who had known him. For Daniel, it was like the world had gone silent. He had never truly accepted the idea that he would one day lose his father. Marcos was his only family, and likely the only person Daniel had ever truly loved. Friends offered the usual words of comfort. During the burial, there were speeches meant to soothe the grieving soul. But no kind words or formal eulogies could ease the pain that now filled Daniel's heart. For others, though, this moment was an opportunity. Daniel was not just a grieving son, he was now a wealthy young man, without a father, and for many, that made him an even more attractive match. That's why so many ladies attended the Mass on the 7th day after the death. Among them were Madalena and Augusta. At the end of the Mass, when the time came for people to offer their condolences, Daniel received them without emotion, as if in a dream. But when Augusta stepped forward and whispered a few gentle words of comfort, something changed. He hadn't expected to see her there. Still, neither his sorrow nor the solemn setting allowed for any surprise to last long. Augusta quietly returned to her mother's side, and Daniel continued to listen to the rest of the mourners. Valadares invited Daniel to stay at his house for a few days. At first, Daniel refused, but Valadares insisted so strongly that Daniel finally agreed. And so straight from the church, he went to Valadares' home. With Marcos gone, Daniel inherited a vast fortune. He hadn't expected to receive it so soon, and he wasn't sure what to do with it. Valadares' wife believed he should marry. Daniel shook his head. Valadares suggested a trip to Europe instead, something more useful and refreshing. That idea, however, led to a small argument between the couple, which nearly ended in a nervous breakdown, something all too common in everyday dramas. Daniel, for his part, wasn't interested in traveling either. After all, he said finally, my life hasn't really changed. The only difference is that now I manage what I used to simply enjoy. Emilia interrupted. That's exactly why I say since administrative work is so tiresome, you should look for a partner. Listen, I think I know someone. Who is she? Daniel asked. Augusta B. Daniel frowned. He suspected Emilia's kindness at the funeral had been nothing more than a plan. He had imagined her to be proud, but now he saw her as someone with hidden motives. Could it be that Valadares' wife had sensed Daniel's thoughts? Either way, she quickly added, but don't think she knows anything about this. She never said a word to me. I actually think it might be hard, since she seems too proud. You really think so? Daniel asked. Yes. But if you want me to talk to her. Oh no. I don't want to get married at all. Daniel truly had no desire to marry. Still, the thought of Augusta stayed with him. There was something mysterious about her that he wanted to understand better. This was the perfect opportunity to get closer. It had already been 20 days since the funeral mass. Daniel decided to visit Augusta's family to thank her for attending the service. They weren't especially close friends, so the gesture would be even more appreciated. When Daniel arrived, only the two ladies were home. Just before he entered, Augusta left the room. Daniel found only Madalena waiting for him. They talked for about half an hour. During all that time, Augusta never came back into the room. Daniel waited a few more minutes, but when she still didn't appear, he stood up to leave. "I hope," Madalena said, "that this won't be your last visit." Daniel nodded politely in thanks. Then he shook Madalena's hand and walked toward the door. At that very moment, Augusta entered the room. They greeted each other coldly. Then Daniel left. Chapter 8. Madalena turned to Augusta, with a hint of disappointment in her voice. "Why didn't you come into the sitting room earlier?" Augusta looked down slightly, her tone calm but firm. "I felt dizzy. I couldn't come." "What a shame," Madalena replied, "because this young man is very charming. I spent a pleasant half hour talking to him." "What a shame," Augusta repeated softly, trying to hide the smile tugging at the corners of her lips. But she didn't hide it well enough. Her mother noticed. "So," Madalena thought to herself, "there's something going on." Augusta didn't say another word out loud. But if someone could have stepped inside her thoughts at that moment, they would have heard her thinking. "They're all the same." It wasn't much of a thought, and it didn't really explain much about what was happening. But as the story moves forward, we might come to understand what Augusta truly meant by those quiet words. Chapter 9. Marriage is the perfect union of two lives, and more than just unity, it is complete and absolute fusion. If marriage is not this, then it is no more than a chance meeting at an inn. Two travelers stop at the same door, choose the same room, eat at the same table, and that is all. This is the most common kind of marriage. The other kind, the true and rare one, is something entirely different. Religion blesses marriage, but it always assumes the prior existence of a bond as sacred as that of the altar itself. The marriage of Valadares was not of this kind. He had married for reasons unrelated to love, first for interest, then for curiosity. To him, marriage was like a trip to Corcovado Hill. Everyone agrees that from Corcovado one can enjoy a magnificent view, but no one has ever thought to build a city there. No one stays. People climb up, enjoy the view, and come back down. Valadares was now beginning to feel the need to come down from Corcovado. The idea that he was bound forever was a true nightmare that choked his spirit. True, his freedom was not entirely gone. The famous salons he had once visited so freely began to celebrate the return of the prodigal son. But it was still a bond, and he could feel it tightening. It might have been made of roses, but he felt it as iron. Amelia had married Valadares as she might have married anyone else's simple change of condition. She had bought freedom in the form of a prison. She had hired a walking companion for the days when she wished to walk, and a protector for her life and reputation. Under these conditions, any groom would have done. The one who happened to be closest was the one chosen. Now imagine, from this, what the married happiness of these two people could possibly be. Daniel could see it coming. Boredom had already taken the seat love had never filled. What once looked like a marriage built on something real was now more like a chain binding two prisoners together. The difference: at least prisoners shared a kind of bond, a shared bitterness that brought them closer. Not here. Not between Valadez and Sibra's daughter. Their connection was fading fast. You didn't need to be a genius to guess that. Soon enough, the house would empty, and the two would find relief in separation. This slow collapse upset Daniel deeply. He lived with them, as mentioned before, and the whole thing wore on him. One morning he made up his mind. It was time to move out. He told the couple straight away. "Move out?" Amelia asked, surprised. "Why?" "I should live alone. And honestly, it suits my nature better." "Well, if that's how you feel," Valadez said. "But you'll still come have dinner with me every day, right?" "I don't know if I can make it every day," Daniel replied. "Already found a place?" Amelia asked. "My lawyer told me he found one in Matacavallos," Daniel said. "Oh," she said, and smiled slyly. Her husband copied her, smiling too. Daniel saw the looks and thought he understood. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked. "Nothing," Amelia said. "It just means it's closer." "Closer to who?" "Oh, come on. You know who where." "Who?" "Who?" "Augusta." "Oh, please." Daniel tried to sound indifferent, but the truth was different. When his lawyer told him about the house in Matacavallos, he'd been happy to hear it. Had taken the place without hesitation. "The truth is," Amelia went on, "I think she's thinking about you." "About me?" "I believe so. Just the other day, when I visited her, she asked me twice if you were doing well. When she asked him the second time, he smiled again, just as he had moments before. Amelia protested strongly, but her objection seemed empty, without real force. It was clear her words didn't match her true feelings. Daniel listened carefully to what Amelia had to say. "And even if that were true," he said, "it's not like I'm going there because of her." "I believe you," Amelia replied. "But still, you're like fire near gunpowder." "I'm neither gunpowder nor fire," he answered. That was the end of the conversation. But a few days later, Daniel had changed completely. His house was on the opposite side of Augustus, a little far but not so distant that they couldn't see each other from a window. On the first day after their talk, he saw her. After that, he never saw her again. Was it coincidence or intention? He couldn't tell. Chapter 20. Daniel received a note from Augusta's uncle 15 days later, inviting him to spend the evening. Should he go? Without a doubt, yes. He didn't want to seem too eager or too close to the young woman. Pride fought in him in two ways. It held him back so he wouldn't look like he was flattering her, and it pushed him forward, urging him to go and try to win her over. It's rare for such a struggle to end well. He only decided to visit Augusta's house in the late afternoon. It was a small, intimate gathering. There was conversation and music, but no dancing. Augusta's uncle asked Daniel to feel at home, to not hold back out of polite formalities. Although Daniel didn't value parlor talk very much, not out of disdain, but because of his personality and upbringing, he knew how to behave like a polite gentleman when needed. He had natural charm. His conversation was easy and bright, if not deep, and this kind of talk always pleased women. Besides, Daniel wanted to impress the young woman. How else could he do it, if not through these small victories of everyday charm? But Augusta seemed to understand all his tricks and the intentions behind them. She treated Daniel the same way she treated everyone else, keeping him on equal footing. She didn't give him the special kind of coldness that some people enjoy receiving. She placed him on the same level as everyone else. At one point, a friend from the house asked Augusta to sing the cavatina from Norma. This happened just as Daniel, trying to grow closer, asked her for a piece from Lucia. Caught between the two requests, Augusta said, "I can't do both at once. One must come first. Decide between you." While the man who had requested the piece in Norma leaned toward Daniel to let him go first, Augusta, with a distracted and indifferent air, played with the braids of a friend who had come close to her and would accompany her to the piano. She had arranged everything carefully so as not to show either favor nor coldness toward Daniel, which she believed would happen if she sang the piece he requested either before or after her turn. These and other small moments had their natural effect on Daniel. His pride began to soften little by little. When he left that night, one could already say that the first light of love had begun to rise in his heart. And curiously, this love was not, as it often is, born from sympathy, but rather from the tension between two people who, had they ever truly hated each other, would have become bitter enemies. Chapter 11. Augusta wasn't someone extraordinary, nor did she have a brilliant mind. Her feelings were much like those of other women her age. What truly shaped her, though, was a quiet coldness inside Ion that made her incapable of deep emotional connection. Add to that a quiet pride in her beauty, and you had the full picture of Maddalena's daughter. Raised by her mother with a strong sense of independence, Augusta developed a sharpness that made her difficult to like. She was bossy, proud, and occasionally kind, but even her kindness came from pride. She didn't really believe in powerful emotions. Love to her was something foreign, something she had no interest in understanding. She cared more about winning admiration in a crowded room than about touching someone's heart. Neither Louise nor Daniel saw this clearly. They both misunderstood her indifference, and that's what kept Louise hopeful and Daniel determined. The real victory would have been to walk away. Maybe even a little anger could have changed her mind. Who knows? Perhaps she would have been the one to take the first step toward the man who played hard to get. Louise thought his wealth and status could impress her. A few moments seemed to prove him right, but they weren't really proof at all. Daniel, on the other hand, felt a bit hurt in his pride. He decided that persistence might pay off. He believed he needed to fight like a general, not charm like a diplomat. He thought the sword of Condé had more power than the pen of Metternich. With these thoughts, he left Augusta's house. It was the first time he felt a real determination take shape in his mind. It wasn't love, not really. It was his pride that pushed him forward. But then again, wasn't this pride a sign of something deeper? Daniel didn't stop to think about that. He threw himself into the fight. Daniel began spending time at Augusta's house, presenting himself as a friendly neighbor. She treated him like all the others, with politeness and grace, but always at arm's length. Her attention was evenly spread, never leaning toward anyone in particular. She gave no reason for complaint, nor for hope. To her, Daniel was no different from Louise. Louise, in truth, didn't visit often. You couldn't even say he was a regular visitor. He'd show up once in a while, stay for about half an hour, exchange a few words, and leave. Daniel, though not the type to play the field or chase women, had his share of easy victories back in his college days. Still, from the start, he acted like a soldier ready for battle. At first, Augusta resisted his energy with ease. His look-she's opening shots were nothing to her. No one could express cold indifference better than she could when faced with the advances of a suitor. But when Daniel, after testing the waters, chose the right moment to bring in the heavy infantry, when he finally confessed his feelings, Augusta found the defense much harder. Though she managed to reject him, it came at a cost. "I love you," Daniel had just said. "And don't think," he added, "this is some poet's kind of love. I'm not a poet, and I don't pretend to be. My love comes more from reason than passion. I'm a calm man. I admit your charm impressed me deeply. But believe me, if I didn't think you were the kind of woman I could marry, I wouldn't be saying any of this. I know love doesn't last longer than Malherbe's roses. Will you marry me?" This strange mix of honesty and arrogance came out smoothly, without drama or tears, and somehow even with charm. Augusta, usually so quick with a reply when faced with a man blinded by love, found herself speechless. For once, she couldn't find the words to answer Daniel's question or his request. Augusta had finally found a shoe that fit her foot. The conversation I'm telling you about happened in a quiet corner of the room. The other guests were chatting in small groups, not paying attention to them. Augusta secretly hoped someone would come over and interrupt the talk, but no one did. "So, what's your answer?" Daniel asked. "I'll tell you," Augusta replied. "I can't accept your love or your proposal." "Why not?" She looked at him, surprised by the question. But when she saw his calm and steady gaze, she smiled. "Officially," she said, "because I don't love you." "That's not a strong reason." "Well, still. Love could come later. All you need is some affection for me. Don't you feel any?" "I don't." "What would it take for you to feel it?" "I don't know," Augusta answered. Daniel took his watch from his pocket and checked the time. Then he put it back without a word. His calmness was partly planned, but also partly real. After putting the watch away, he said, "Well, Miss Augusta," he began, "I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a more suitable husband than me." "You think highly of yourself," she said, smiling. "The highest opinion in the world," Daniel replied. "Since I'm sure everyone else thinks badly of me, I make up for it by thinking the best possible things about myself. For example, your comment means you think I'm conceited. But I think exactly the opposite about me." "That's your way of balancing things," Augusta said. "So you admit it?" "I admit I'm feeling very warm," she said, standing up. Daniel bit his lip but stood up too and offered her his arm. "Shall we go to the window?" he asked. Augusta accepted without showing any strong feeling, either good or bad. "Actually, it's cooler here," Daniel said as soon as they reached the window. And the night looks beautiful. It does, she repeated. But if it's hot over there, it's cold here. Daniel adjusted his posture slightly, choosing his words with care. Not so much, he said gently. I'm noticing something, Donna Augusta. What is it? She asked. It's just that everything seems exaggerated to you. It's not that hot over there, and not that cold here either. Why do you see things this way? Don't you think this habit of yours might lead you to be unfair at times? If that's true, Augusta replied calmly, then I believe I would be the first to suffer from that unfairness. Forgive me, but that's not always the case. And that's exactly why I think justice is such a beautiful thing. Please, think carefully about what I'm saying, Donna Augusta. Never judge things through the lens of your own whims. Daniel spoke with such polite charm that it disarmed her, even though he now had every reason to excuse himself from the window and return to the drawing room. When he mentioned the lens of her whims, Augusta looked at him in surprise. Then she responded, My whims may be flawed, but in any case, I won't borrow the glasses of your bitterness. The meaning was clear. Daniel hadn't expected such a sharp reply. My bitterness, he repeated. I understand what you mean. I could stay silent, yes. But would it be worthy of us to ignore such a graceful hint? Donna Augusta, I repeat what I told you before. I love you. I wanted to marry you. But your refusal is so sacred to me that I don't even wish to question it. It moves me the same way the Virgin Mary would move me if I asked her for a favor and she denied it. I accept it, and I think no more of it. It was fortunate, really, that Valadares and his wife walked in just then. Augusta went to embrace Emilia, while Daniel stepped forward to shake Valadares' hand. Chapter 12. Daniel had always been the kind of man who wore indifference like a second skin, but now, for the first time, he felt something shift inside him. The truth was hitting hard. Life without her would not be easy. When he got home that night, he replayed every moment in his head. He remembered every word he had exchanged with Augusta, and with each memory came regret. For a moment, he even thought about going back to apologize. The sound of a distant gunshot echoed through the night, and still he couldn't sleep. If he could have stepped into Augusta's room at that hour, he would have seen the soft glow of her candle mixing with the first light of dawn. She had barely slept 2 hours, and even that little rest had been broken by uneasy dreams. Was it the same pain that kept her awake as the one haunting Daniel? I could, for the sake of the story, leave that question unanswered. But I choose to be honest. I will tell you exactly what my characters feel. Augusta had not stayed awake for the same reason Daniel had. Her pain was not love, but pride. The proud Augusta felt ashamed of the scene from the night before. She had lowered herself, only to meet Daniel's easy surrender. It was her first defeat. Her first thought was not a noble one. She wanted revenge. She imagined making him beg, making him crawl back to her feet. But how could she do that if she gave him hope? And would giving him hope really prove her victory, when the idea of it now disgusted her? You might say, and rightly so, that these were pointless thoughts for a young woman from the provinces who treated love like a chess match. But what does that matter? I am only telling the truth. I admit it would have been more beautiful, more natural, more honorable for her to follow her heart alone, to love or to reject a suitor based purely on her feelings. But if that had happened, this story would end far too soon, and it would not be the story I am telling now. When Augusta finally rose from bed, her eyes were heavy with tiredness. The long night had left its mark. And yet, there was something strangely beautiful about her eyes, perhaps even more poetic in their tired softness than in their usual brightness. Daniel said nothing at first. He just looked at her, and there was something in his silence that made Augusta uneasy. It wasn't just the way he stared, but the way he seemed to see right through her, as if he could read every thought she tried to hide. She had changed. Yes, there was more strength in her eyes, more fire in her face. Her expression was sharp, almost defiant, like a woman who had made peace with her own anger. Days passed without them meeting again. Daniel didn't go to her house, and she didn't appear at her window. It was as if they had agreed, without saying a word, to keep their distance. Then one Monday morning, Valadares showed up at Daniel's house. He came with a cheerful mood, as if nothing had happened between them, and brought news of a group trip to Tijuca. Several families would be going, he said, and it would be a chance to get out of the city and enjoy the fresh air. Augusta's going, Valadares added, watching Daniel's face closely. What do I care? Daniel replied, not looking up. Valadares smiled. What do you care? I thought you might feel something for her. Don't you two love each other? She hates me, Daniel said plainly. Well, Valadares said, I've heard that hate is sometimes the road to love. What about you? I feel nothing. Only contempt. Valadares laughed softly. They say contempt is another shortcut to the city of holy matrimony. To your city, Daniel said, smirking. Not mine. Valadares sighed. To my city, yes. You're right. But sometimes I wish it weren't. Is it really that bad? The worst possible. Still, things will settle. You'll find comfort outside the home, and shall be happy with new dresses and hats. Don't frown like that. It's what you believe, and it's what I believe too. Marriage, my friend, is like a lottery. Yours was a blank ticket. A waste of money, or maybe not. Because even if you lose everything, you still have the money. Daniel's words hit hard, but Valadares swallowed them, as best he could. He changed the subject back to the trip to Tijuca, and it was agreed that Daniel would go. 8 days later, the trip took place. Among the guests were Augusta and Luis. Daniel didn't know much about Luis, and even less about his feelings for Augusta. But when he saw them together, something inside him stirred. Not jealousy, more like surprise. He hadn't expected to see her so at ease with another man. At the first chance he got, Daniel approached Augusta. Are you still decided against me? He asked. The same, she answered. He nodded, then began to speak about how beautiful the place was. Augusta listened, confused. You love nature that much? She asked. Deeply, he said. Nature never lies. It never speaks just to hurt you. Daniel picked another wildflower from the grass beside him, rolling it between his fingers. You know, he said slowly, poets often get it wrong. Augusta looked at him, surprised. Wrong? They say nature speaks, he continued, but they never say how. It doesn't speak like we do, with words and voices. It speaks in silence, in colors, in the way a breeze moves the leaves. That's how it should speak to us, without noise, without lies. Augusta didn't answer right away. She watched him twist the stem of the flower, his eyes distant. "I've noticed something," she said at last. "Words can ruin everything. A single sentence can destroy a whole dream." Daniel gave a quiet nod. "Exactly. That's why I prefer this." He held up the crushed flower. "It doesn't talk. It doesn't promise. It just is. And because it doesn't speak, it can't disappoint." He opened his hand, letting the broken petals fall. Augusta looked at them, then at him. Her lips curled slightly. "Even broken," she said, "that flower is more honest than most people." Daniel raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. At that moment, Louise walked up, interrupting them. "Donna Augusta," he said, adjusting his jacket. "Your mother is asking for you." Augusta stood and gave Daniel one last glance before walking away. Louise watched her go, then turned to Daniel. "Nice weather we're having," he said, almost too casually. "Yes," Daniel replied, not looking at him. His eyes followed Augusta until she disappeared inside the house. Louise frowned. He could feel something in the air, something unspoken. Was it possible? Could there be something between them? They stood in silence for a few minutes. The wind blew gently through the trees, and the sun began to dip lower in the sky. Finally, Daniel turned to Louise. "So," he said, "what do you think of all this?" Louise hesitated. "Of what?" "This place. These people. Life." Louise gave a short laugh. "I think," he said, "that some things are better left unsaid." Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They didn't speak again until dinner was served. Chapter 13. Daniel woke up one morning with a sudden urge to take a trip to Minas Gerais. He felt that Augusta was holding on to his heart more than was good for him. New strength stirred inside him, a feeling he hadn't known before. Augusta's indifference made him think his love was wasted, and he feared being hurt again. So he made up his mind. He would leave. One morning, Valadares received a letter. It read, "Valadares, in leaving for Minas tomorrow. I don't know if he'll have time to come say goodbye in person. Please give my best to your wife. Yours from the heart, Daniel." As soon as Valadares read the letter, he hurried to see his friend. "You're going to Minas?" he asked. "Yes, it's true," Daniel replied. "How long will you stay there?" "About 5 months. Anything I can bring you?" "I was almost ready to go with you." "And your wife?" "She'll stay." "So you're okay with that?" "Well, I'll tell you this, he actually feel the need to get away for a while from that kind of torment." "Valadares, that's not nice." "Whether it's nice or not, I'm going with you. But I ask just one thing." "What is it?" "That we move the trip to next week." Impossible. Why not? I have my reasons. Valadares made a face of disappointment. He tried again, but Daniel would not change his mind. In that case, Valadares said, I guess I can't go. I don't understand why not. Come on. Traveling alone is boring. With you, it would be different. Listen, what if we went to Paris instead? Maybe later. Their conversation didn't last much longer. Valadares left feeling sad and defeated. Daniel went back to giving the final instructions for his trip. That same afternoon, he went to Augusta's house to say goodbye to the family and offer his help while he was in Minas. Augusta's mother thanked him and told him that once the parliament session ended, they would leave for the north. That meant they wouldn't meet again until next year. See you next year, Daniel said calmly. Daniel didn't see any surprise or sadness in Augusta's face when she heard about his trip. She talked to him cheerfully about small, unimportant things. She even played a little piano and said goodbye like she'd see him the very next day. By 6 o'clock, Daniel was already home, back from Augusta's place. But just 5 minutes later, a carriage stopped in front of his house. Who is it? He asked the servant. The servant went to check and came back saying, It's a lady. She's coming up. A few moments later, Amelia Valadares walked into his living room. I hope you don't mind me coming alone to your home, she said. Mind? Daniel replied, offering her a seat. There's nothing to forgive. There's everything to thank you for. So, how are you feeling? She asked. Oh, so, he answered. I think I need to go on a trip to Minas Gerais, and I've already asked Valadares to say goodbye to you for me. He told me, she said. And that's exactly why I'm here. Amelia smiled with a look that said more than her words. Daniel didn't understand how the trip to Minas could have anything to do with her visit. I came, she said, to support a request from my husband. Daniel couldn't remember what request she meant. A request? He asked. What request? Valadares came home very sad earlier. I asked what was wrong, and he told me that he wanted to go with you to Minas, but he couldn't get you to delay the trip until next week. Well, that's exactly what I'm here to ask. This time, Daniel smiled. I couldn't, he said, postpone a trip I've already prepared for so long. But now that you've asked, I can't say numero. Tell Valadares he can count on me. Thank you so much, said Amelia, clearly happy. You're doing a great favor to my husband. I think, Daniel interrupted gently, that it's a favor to you. You can count on me. Amelia Valadares stood up to say goodbye, just as she had when she first arrived. As usual, she let her eyes wander across the room one last time, sharp and curious. Please excuse the mess, Daniel said, noticing her glance. I'm leaving tomorrow, as you can see. Oh, of course, she replied, walking over to a table. These bronze pieces are lovely. You really have good taste. I like to think so. For example, Augusta. She stopped. What about Augusta? Daniel asked. She is beautiful. And that proves you have good taste. Oh, come on, he said with a smile. You know what I mean. I know you like her. Well, I did. Amelia smiled but said nothing. Did she doubt him? Daniel wondered. He was about to explain more, to make sure she understood that his feelings for Augusta were truly over, when Mrs. Valadares turned her attention to a book lying on the table. He told her what the book was about, and then she went back to looking at the other items on the table. Amelia was naturally nosy and careless. Visiting Daniel's home was already a bit bold for a young woman of her standing. Staying longer than expected and poking around the room like that could cause talk. What would Daniel think if he didn't already know how silly and impulsive she could be? Suddenly, as Amelia reached for an album, something else caught her eye underneath Ida garter. Daniel was facing a mirror and didn't notice her move. She picked it up and saw two initials stitched into Ita G, Augustus initials. You may remember the scene from Rua do Ouvidor. When Daniel turned back to face Amelia, he saw her smiling. He walked closer and saw the garter in her hands. He hadn't thought about the initials, something straight out of a novel. Trying to sound casual, he said, "You shouldn't have found that. It's a trophy from a lost cause." "Oh," she said. Amelia pointed to the initials engraved on the bracelet. G. Daniel's face went pale. She looked at him, tossed the ribbon onto the table, and walked over to the mirror. "Don't worry," she said. "I know how to keep a secret." Daniel had already regained his composure. "Worry about what?" he asked. "I don't know," Amelia replied, adjusting her hat. "And anyway, it's not even a secret." "Oh, it's not," he said. "I thought it was. Didn't you just tell me you don't love her anymore?" "Excuse me," Daniel said, taking the chance her words gave him. "I think you might be mistaken." "Maybe I am," she said, "and so is Louise." "Who is Louise?" Daniel asked. "The congressman," Amelia answered with a smile. She then took Daniel's hand and said, "Goodbye, goodbye. I'm in a hurry." "I have your word you won't go until next week." Before Daniel could offer his arm or try to stop her, she left the room and walked downstairs. Moments later, her carriage pulled away. Chapter 14. Daniel couldn't hide his irritation the moment Amelia left. He felt like chasing after her, grabbing her, and punishing her for acting so carelessly by stepping into his home. The incident with the bracelet and the half-truths she left behind kept boiling in Daniel's once calm mind. What a reckless woman, he thought. Coming into a single man's house like that, asking me to leave the country with her husband, rummaging through my things, and slandering people she claims to love. Oh, Valadares, what kind of girl have you gotten mixed up with? Chapter 15. Valadares wasn't as demanding as Daniel. What bothered him about Amelia wasn't anything serious, it was just the usual quirks of a flirtatious woman, her little whims and demands. In his mind, all of that would fade if he spent some time away from her, to clear his head. He thought a trip to Minas Gerais might be exactly what he needed. But Daniel didn't want to delay his own plans just to wait for Valadares. Amelia found out and, surprisingly, helped Valadares by asking Daniel herself to wait a bit longer. The next morning, at breakfast, Amelia sat across from Valadares and said, "Have you packed your bags yet?" "Why would I?" he asked. For the trip to Minas. I'm not going alone. You'll go with Daniel. But he didn't want to wait. He will now. How do you know that? I asked him. Valadares couldn't help himself. He stood up and gave her a warm, grateful hug, right in front of the maid. The maid, clearly embarrassed, quickly excused herself and went to the kitchen. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you did for me, Valadares said, still smiling. Oh, you really want to go to Minas, don't you? Are you trying to forget me? Me? Forget you, my love. Never. I just want to see the province, and honestly, I could use a change of air. Valladano says I'm getting too weak, and that I need to build myself up again. Believe me, he'll miss you terribly. But I know you won't come with me. You know I can't. They finished breakfast happily, almost as if they were both excited about the idea of being apart for a while. Daniel, on the other hand, decided to leave right away, ignoring his earlier promise. At first, it felt wrong to break his word. It was rude after all. But the irritation Amelia had caused him the day she visited him was still fresh in his mind. And just as Valadares was thanking Amelia for helping him talk to Daniel, Daniel was already on his way to Minas, accompanied only by one servant. Meanwhile, Valadares had left home to take care of last-minute travel details. Around 2 o'clock, he remembered he wanted to meet up with Daniel before the trip. Valadares walked into the house looking for his friend. The place felt empty, like something had shifted while he was away. He turned to the first servant he saw. "Where is he?" Valadares asked. "He left," the servant replied. "Will he be back?" "He went to Minas." Valadares' face dropped. The news hit him like a cold wind. "It seems," the servant added, "I have a letter for you." "For me? Let me see it." The servant went to fetch the letter and handed it over. Valadares opened it and read, "Valadares, I promised your wife I would delay my trip. But I regret I cannot keep that promise to such a kind lady. A storm has entered my house, nosy. Foolish woman who has turned my living room and my peace of mind upside down. To forget this unexpected guest, I have no choice but to leave sooner. Until then, or until I return. Yours, Daniel." Valadares read the letter twice, but didn't quite understand what Daniel meant. When Amelia learned that Daniel had left, despite the promise he made to her, she felt a quiet sting of embarrassment. But Amelia was not one to hold feelings for long. Her anger faded in less than 15 minutes. Still, she was upset especially by Daniel's note. What Valadares couldn't grasp, Amelia understood all too well. She felt insulted by Daniel's words. Even worse, she believed the letter had been written with the clear intention of being read by her. Valadares decided to stick to his original travel plans. But fate had other ideas. An unexpected event, unrelated to our story, stopped the trip from happening. During a dinner with friends, boys and girls alike, Valadares found himself caught in love's trap. He gave up his Minas trip entirely, offering it as a sacrifice at the altar of a woman named Lies, a love he wasn't supposed to have. He never spoke of the trip again. Amelia tried, more than once, to convince him to go away for a while. Valadares, who in every other situation played the part of the obedient husband, refused this time with surprising force. It was proof enough he was truly in love with someone else. Chapter 16. Augusta found out for sure that Daniel had left for Minas Gerais, and she felt disappointed. Even though he had said a very serious goodbye to her and the family, she still believed he wouldn't really go. Not that she thought Daniel was pretending when he said farewell, no. She knew he was sincere, but she believed it would be hard for him to leave the city. Deep down, she was convinced that Daniel loved her deeply. But maybe that word deeply was too much. The truth was, Daniel did care for her, and that was exactly why he had decided to go on this trip. He wanted to stop the feelings from growing stronger. He had heard that traveling was a great cure for heart problems, especially the kind that came from love. Augusta felt hurt. She was proud, and that pride made things worse. She secretly hoped that if Daniel looked back one last time from her window, he wouldn't be able to go through with the trip. She imagined him turning around, walking back inside, and staying there forever, loving her by her side. But that hope never came true. Still, if she didn't love him, why did she want that to happen? She didn't know. But she did. After Daniel left, Madalena tried to understand how her daughter really felt. One afternoon, she asked, "What do you think about Dr. Daniel's sudden trip?" Augusta answered, "Nothing." "Why should I feel something?" "No, I just wanted to know," Madalena replied. "You know he liked you." But Augusta didn't say another word about it. She stayed quiet. Later one day, Luis was with her and told her he was going back to the countryside. He also said he would stop his political career. Until now, he had held on to some hope, but now it was gone. "I thought," said Augusta, "that you had already given up hope." "There was still one left," he said. "What hope?" "That someone would love me when everyone else had forgotten me." "And now you've lost that hope?" Augusta asked. "Well, don't worry, you didn't lose much." "I have," he said. "Because that hope was built on a lie." Luis stood there, staring at Augusta as she sat across from him. Her face was unreadable, her eyes distant. He took a deep breath and said, softly, "Until now, I thought your heart was silent." She looked up, surprised. Oh. "But I know better now," he continued. "Your heart has spoken." "What did it say?" she asked. Tona Augusta was ready to laugh. Her tone was sharp, mocking, though only she knew why. He answered, "It said it loves someone who is not here." At that, Augusta stood up quickly. She fixed her eyes on Luis and said, "That's either a lie or someone's cruel joke. And besides, I don't see why my feelings should matter to you." "They do matter," he said. "They matter a lot, Donna Augusta. I won't speak of love, since you've already told me not to. But let me ask you just one thing, why do I?" She gave him a long look, full of scorn and coldness. Then she turned around and walked away without a word. "This is too much," Luis muttered to himself. He grabbed his hat and left the house. As he walked down the street, he kept thinking, "What is this hope I carry? Why do I keep hurting myself every day? That woman is like a statue. She has no warmth, no soul. She is carved from stone. What good is love, if it only brings me pain and shame? No. This can't go on. Everything has its limits. From that day forward, Louise never returned to Madalena's house. Chapter 17. Augusta's behavior had become the talk of the town. "Why does this girl keep turning down every suitor?" the mothers asked. "It seems like she doesn't want to get married at all. Is she planning to stay single forever?" That was the big question, and it puzzled everyone. Of course, the obvious answer was that Augusta said no, because she simply didn't like any of them. But the mothers, ever practical, believed that a marriage offer should never be refused unless, of course, there was a very good reason not to. Madalena respected her daughter's feelings. She wanted Augusta to be happy and believed the best way to do that was to let her marry someone she truly loved. But where was that perfect man? So far, no one had caught Augusta's eye. She stayed in her own world, distant and uninterested, not even moved by the departures of Louise or Daniel. She watched them go with no sign of emotion. Who was right? Those who believed that one day love would finally reach her heart, or those who saw her as nothing more than a cold marble statue? 2 months had passed since Daniel left for Minas Gerais. One day, while walking down Rua da Quitanda with her mother to look at some fabrics, Augusta ran into Amelia. Amelia had been out for a walk with Valadares. It was unusual for them to be seen together, and Valadares couldn't resist making a joke about it when he saw them. "Don't mind me, Dona Madalena," he said with a smile. "When the sun and the moon walk side by side like this, it can only mean one thing: an eclipse is coming." After a few minutes of small talk, Amelia joined Madalena and Augusta, while Valadares went off to attend to other matters. Amelia had dinner with some friends and returned home late that night. Valadares said he couldn't join them because he had a diplomatic dinner to attend. In fact, he did go to a dinner that night, where a few secretaries and embassy staff were present. But if it was supposed to be a diplomatic event, no one told the guests. The tone of the evening was more like a war meeting than a formal reception. As soon as they got home, Madalena turned to Amelia and said, "Did you know we'll be leaving soon?" Amelia hesitated before speaking, her voice low but urgent. "I heard something about you and Daniel," she said, fixing her gaze on Augusta. Augusta's expression didn't change. "Me? In love with Daniel? That's absurd." Amelia nodded slowly. "That's what I thought. But still, you should be careful." "Careful? Why?" Augusta asked, her tone calm but curious. "People talk. And if they say the wrong thing, it can hurt your reputation." Augusta shrugged. "Let them talk. I don't care what people say." Amelia looked at her closely. "Even if they say you gave Daniel a ribbon from your dress? Like a token, like other girls give flowers or shirt buttons?" "That's ridiculous," Augusta replied, almost laughing. "But what if they say he actually has it?" Amelia pressed. "Then they're lying," Augusta said firmly. "You think I would do something like that?" Amelia took a deep breath. "I believe you. But listen, I saw something at Daniel's house the other day. A ribbon, your ribbon. Augusta's eyes widened slightly, but she stayed quiet. It might seem like nothing to you, Amelia continued, but to others it could look like something more. Something dangerous. Augusta finally responded, her voice cold and steady. If people want to misunderstand, they will. I'm not afraid of rumors. Amelia sighed, clearly worried. Just promise me you'll think before you act. People don't always see things the way they really are. I know that, Augusta said. But I also know myself. And I know what's true. Amelia gave her a long look, then nodded. I hope you're right. Chapter 18. Daniel returned to Rio de Janeiro after an absence of 4 full months. The trip had done him good, like a fresh start. He felt like himself again, the way he always had been. Any trace of the emotional break he had taken from his life was now gone. Truth be told, he now thought he had acted foolishly during those days when he believed himself in love with Augusta. His calm, indifferent nature, briefly shaken, had returned to normal. He arrived home late at night, and since he hadn't told anyone of his return, no one waited for him at the door. As he stepped inside, he couldn't help but glance toward Augusta's house. He didn't know if they still lived there, or had moved to the countryside. The house was quiet. The servant who greeted him said the family still lived in the same place. And who asked you about that? Daniel asked. I'll tell you, sir. They used to send word now and then, asking when you would return. Really? Yes, sir. And just 3 days ago I received a letter with instructions to give it to you the moment you arrived. A letter? Yes, sir. It's in your study. I'll go take off my boots first. In the past, Daniel would have gone straight for the letter. Now, he chose to take off his boots first. Let that be a sign, when a man wants to read a letter before anything else, as in love. When he takes off his boots first, the love is gone. That's a free tip for you. Once his boots were off, Daniel walked to his study and read the letter. It was from Augusta. It read, As soon as you arrive, I ask that you come to our home. I wish to speak with you. Augusta. Huh? Daniel said out loud. Could it be that the girl has changed her mind? What on earth does she want with me now? If it's about love, I'm not interested. That chapter is closed. We'll see what it's all about tomorrow. Daniel turned toward Joao with a smile, catching himself mid-thought. Joao, did you hear what I just said? He asked. Joao grinned slyly. I only hear what my master wants me to hear. Good. Bring me something to eat. Daniel dined calmly, like a man returning from a leisurely trip. Did anyone come looking for me? Mr. Valadares came by twice. He said he has serious news to share with you. With me? That's what he told me. Go tell him I'm back, and you'll see him today. Joanna left the room. Daniel read Augusta's note again. He couldn't help but feel surprised at how bold she had been writing and signing a message that could easily put her in a difficult position. But then again, he thought, that's just like her wild, unpredictable nature. About an hour later, Valadares arrived. They hugged tightly, happy to see each other again. Valadares sat down and asked Daniel for his full attention. I was eager to see you, Valadares said. Well, here I am. And how is your wife? Don't mention her. Why not? I want to start divorce proceedings. I figured as much, Daniel replied calmly. People say two similar geniuses can't mix, and it seems that saying is true. You both were the very image of carelessness. Daniel, forgive my honesty. It's the right of a friend. To be honest, I've always believed the only real value in friendship is the ability to say the hard truths, under the excuse that honesty is a duty of the heart. So, I stand by my point. You two were never going to last. You were, and still are, two shallow minds. And you? Do you want to act like a serious man? Heaven forbid. I'm neither serious, nor shallow. I'm indifferent. Those are the two extremes. I live somewhere between them. Character is like a necktie. Some wear a small black ribbon, that's the playful kind. Others wear big wide cloth, that's the serious type. Valadares sat with his arms crossed, the way people do when they're stuck in their own thoughts. He had that look, the one that says, I'm not mad, just tired of everything. Across from him, Daniel flipped through some papers like he didn't have a care in the world. You know, Valadares started. The first time I tried to talk to her, I got stuck. The second time I couldn't breathe. I had to wear a regular tie. Can you believe it? Daniel didn't say anything at first. He just let out a long, heavy sigh, the kind that comes from deep inside. Then he said, Okay. Forget about my flaws and just listen to my problems. I can't live with Amelia anymore. I have to leave her, no matter what. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Is that decided? Yes. Then I guess my advice won't help. I'm not even asking for advice, Valadares said, waving a hand. I just want you to back me up when everyone starts blaming me. No way, Daniel said, flat and cold. Why not? Valadares asked, surprised. I don't want him mixed up in family stuff. Valadares looked at him, waiting for something else, but Daniel just stared back, calm as ever. The silence stretched between them like a tight rope. Is that really your final answer? Valadares asked. It is. Another silence followed. Longer this time. Valadares stood up, walked around a bit, then lit a cigar. Daniel kept organizing his papers like nothing had just happened. So, how was your trip? Valadares asked, trying to change the subject. Fine. And here I was thinking I could have gone with you. Oh right, Valadares added. What did you mean in that letter you sent me? I never really understood it. Oh, I just meant I couldn't wait. But there were some weird phrases. Forget it, Daniel said. Did your wife read the letter? She did. Valadares shook his head. Man, if only I had gone with you. But is it really that boring out there? Well, Daniel said, shrugging, if you're into parties and hanging out on Rua do Ouvidor, then yeah, it might feel boring. But me, I fit in anywhere. I guess you're right, Valadares said. If I had gone, I would have missed a lot. Of course. All kinds of weird stuff. You know we have new people in the group? Where? At the Alcazar. The whole vibe is different now. I wore this jacket for the first time last night at a big dinner in Tijuca. A dinner for Citara. What do you think of the jacket? It looks good. You should get one made. That's what everyone's wearing now. I wish I had brought the patterns with me. The pants are cut so well. These ones I have are already out of style. I brought them because I left in a hurry, and it's night. And the fabrics. Valadares kept talking like that for a while, going on about clothes, dinners, and who wore what. He didn't seem to notice the time passing. But Daniel finally said, "I'm tired. I need to sleep." Valadares nodded, like he understood, even if he didn't really want to. Valadares left, promising to come back the next day to get an answer from him. As he reached the doorway, Brass asked, "Is that about the divorce or the pants?" "Both," Valadares replied, walking down the stairs. Chapter 19. The next evening, Daniel paid a visit to Augusta's family. He was curious to see what kind of impression she would make on him. Although he no longer felt anything for her, he wanted to know if the simple sight of her faciance so dear could bring back old memories long gone. He entered the room with confidence and calm. Madalena greeted him at the door, while Augusta sat on the sofa and stood up only when Daniel appeared. After the usual greetings, the kind exchanged after a long absence, Daniel said he hadn't expected to find them in Rio de Janeiro. Since the legislative sessions were over, and Madalena's brother had planned to return to the province. "The need has passed for now," Augusta replied. "My uncle is staying a little longer." "That's a pleasure for all of us," Madalena added. Daniel nodded in agreement. The conversation moved on to other topics until more guests arrived. At last, Daniel found himself alone with Augusta in the corner near a window. "Did you receive my letter?" she asked. "A short note, yes." "That's right." "Do you think me careless?" "No. Just bold." "That's the same thing in this case." "Whatever it is, the truth is, you got the note and you came." "I would have come anyway," Daniel replied. "But your note made me come sooner." "Do you know what I want from you?" "I can't guess." "Do you remember what you told me some time ago?" "You said I loved you." "Well, I have something to propose. Will you marry me?" Daniel was stunned by the directness of her question. It hit him like a punch to the stomach. Unable to find a reply, he muttered a single syllable. Anyone watching the two might have thought their roles were reversed. Daniel looked like a shy young girl, while Augusta seemed like a passionate, determined suitor trying to win a final answer from a hesitant lover. After a few seconds, Augusta said, "You want to answer?" "Do you want me to answer?" Daniel asked, slowly regaining his composure. Daniel stood by the window long after Augusta left, stunned by what he just heard. Everything about her seemed strange to him now. He tried to think of her as careless, but he knew better. Her character was not like that. He had studied it once before. Was it possible she was only being bold? Was this just a game to her? That night, Daniel thought hard about how to reply, or rather, how to shape his answer. The truth was simple. He didn't love her. His heart was cold. To lie to her would be cruel. He decided honesty was the only way. But how could he tell her this without hurting her pride? How could he explain that his feelings were gone? The next day, after hours of thinking, he wrote the following letter. My dear lady, the unusual nature of our situation calls for an unusual response. It is not every day that a man is asked to marry a beautiful, talented young woman, a woman any man would be proud to call his wife. And yet, here I am, turning down that very offer. That is exactly what I must do. I respectfully decline. Please don't judge me too quickly. Allow me to explain why I must say numero I could have accepted your proposal when I still loved you. But now, those feelings are gone. Without love, I cannot make you happy. To marry without love would be to ruin a fine lady like you. I know this seems strange. Most marriages happen without love. But I believe that to build a life together, love must be present. Without it, there is no future, only regret. Daniel sealed the letter and sent it, his heart heavy but clear. But what can I do? I, deeply skeptical about everything, still have the foolish hope of believing in love even if it's rare, and I believe love should be the only reason for marriage. Given these reasons, my decision to refuse is as noble and honorable as it would be despicable if I accepted. Believe me, nevertheless, I remain your friend and admirer. He closed the letter and sent it away. What effect would it have on Augusta's heart? Chapter 20. Augusta didn't seem upset by Daniel's reply. She held back her anger, showing it would hurt her pride. She didn't want to, so she didn't. But just a few days later, people started noticing Louise visiting Madalena's house more often. Those who came to the house also saw that the relationship between the congressman and Augusta had become much warmer than before. When Madalena realized this, she was quite happy with how things had turned out. She had always preferred to see her niece married to a man who clearly deserved her trust. So was this a romance? Some said yes. Others weren't so sure. Everyone agreed, though, that something had changed between them. Luis, for his part, already felt more hopeful. Not because Augusta had given him clear signs, but because everything she did seemed to say so. As for Daniel, after sending the letter to Augusta, he hesitated about going back to the house. Yet, curious to see how she'd react, he decided to go. And so, 15 days after his last visit, he showed up again. How did Augusta greet him? Daniel was walking through a hallway when he met Augusta coming from an inner room. As soon as she saw him, she hurried toward him with a smile on her face. Daniel had expected a look of anger, or at least coldness. Instead, he felt, as people say, completely disappointed. They exchanged polite greetings. Then Daniel asked her, "Have you forgiven me?" "I have." She said it with such grace that Daniel regretted sending the letter at all. That night, as usual, Louise came to the house. Madalena welcomed Daniel with a smile that seemed almost sad. She didn't know about the letter, but her smile seemed to say, "What a loss for you. Now someone else will be happy." Daniel was kind and friendly to everyone. Augusta showed no sign of dislike toward him at all. Daniel wrestled with a quiet unease as he watched the scene unfold. Was this genuine, or just another act? He wondered to himself. Louise, on the other hand, wore a face lit up with love. For him, there was no longer any doubt this patience had finally paid off. The presence of Daniel, who once made him anxious, now barely registered. From where Daniel stood, it was clear that Louise held all the cards. He didn't feel the urge to challenge him. Instead, he found himself thinking about how easily Augusta shifted from one affection to another. With any other woman, it might not have surprised him. But from proud Augusta, that was something else entirely. Chapter 21. Daniel walked into his house and found a letter waiting for him, left there by Valadares. This time, the dandy was finally getting a divorce. Daniel smiled, tossed the letter aside and thought nothing of it. But the next morning, as soon as he stepped outside, he heard the news confirmed. Those two souls, never meant to be together, had finally gone their separate ways despite how similar their interests had seemed at first. Valadares himself came to confirm it. Daniel ran into him at Rocio, near the corner of the Fluminense Club. "Hey, my dear Daniel," Valadares said. "Did you hear?" "Hear what?" "I'm finally getting rid of the saddle." "The saddle is my wife." "Well then," Daniel joked, "you must be the donkey." "And don't forget the 3 R's, Valadares added with a laugh. "But I already heard you two had split up." "I moved out already. Now we're just handling the legal part." "Have you really thought this through?" "Oh, I've thought about it way too much. If I hadn't left so fast, I'd have gone mad. And if you had gone mad earlier, you wouldn't have gotten married in the first place." "That's true," Valadares admitted. They said goodbye, and Daniel walked away, quietly amused by Valadares' situation. The first time Daniel visited Augusta's house again, he found Amelia there. Valadares' wife seemed cheerful, as though nothing big had happened in her life. Daniel didn't mention the divorce, but Amelia, when she got a moment alone with him, told him the same story her husband had told, only this time, she was the victim, not Valadares. Daniel listened like a good friend, but he didn't say anything in response. All of this, he thought on his way home, is just another reason never to get married. Soon after, everyone heard about a big ball being thrown by Augusta's uncle, who was moving with his whole family to the countryside. The old congressman wasn't usually one for parties, but he agreed to do everything his niece asked. Augusta wanted one last big moment of success in the city before leaving. And on the night of the ball, that's exactly what she got. She was absolutely stunning. She had a way of being elegant, without trying too hard. She had taste, and she put in extra effort that night, knowing it would be her final dance. Louise was completely taken aback when she walked into the room, and Daniel was just as stunned. Donna Augusta chose Daniel as her first dance partner. "You know," he said, taking his place in the square dance line, "you look absolutely stunning tonight." "Really?" she asked. "I mean it. Everyone here is thinking the same thing." Given their past, it was hard for Augusta and Daniel to act too familiar with each other. Even though Louise felt confident that he was close to winning Augusta's heart completely, he still felt uneasy seeing how kind she was to Daniel. He knew there was nothing serious between them, but he worried anyway, and that was enough to bother him. But all his doubts vanished when Augusta chose him as her partner for the next dance. "I didn't get to dance the first one," Louise said, "but I hope you'll let me have the second." "Won't that cause any talk?" Augusta asked. "Why would it? They say the second dance is for lovers." Louis smiled happily. "That's right," he said, even though he wasn't exactly sure what he was agreeing to. As the dance went on, all of Louis' nervousness disappeared. Donna Augusta was more charming than ever, and she seemed completely at ease with him. Chapter 22. Amelia Valadez walked into the room just as the dance was ending, and she came alone. We already know she was beautiful, and that she dressed well, maybe a little too boldly at times. But tonight, she looked perfect, no exaggeration, just pure elegance. Very few people, only 2 others, knew that she and her husband had decided to separate. So when people asked where Valadez was, she answered easily. "He went to a political dinner. He'll be here soon." Forgive her lightness. She gave no sign of what she truly felt. When Amelia entered, she saw Augusta on Louis' arm, talking with him in a friendly way. As the night went on, she noticed how close they had become more than usual. Could it be love? She wondered. The first chance she got, Amelia sat down with Augusta to talk. They went into a small, quieter room off the main hall. A waltz played in the background as they sat side by side on a sofa. "I want to congratulate you," said Amelia. "For what?" "For your new romance and your upcoming marriage." "There's no romance and no marriage plans," Augusta replied. "But there's hope for something serious." "That, yes. Soon. Let me tell you something. I'll probably end up marrying Louise, but not because I love him." At this, Amelia thought of her own husband, Valadez. "I'm marrying for 2 reasons," Augusta went on. "The first is to stop all the other suitors from chasing me." "And what about the suitors of your heart?" "Oh, those." "And the second reason?" "The second reason is that marrying him is the best way to forget." Augusta hesitated for a moment. "Go on," said Amelia. "Listen, my friend. This is a secret that stays between us. Do you know who it is that I truly loved and still love?" "Daniel." "Yes. I suspected. Only someone with pride mixed with indifference could have beaten my own pride and coldness. But then, having always refused what he asked for me hand and my heart, he finally offered them to him one day. And what did he do? He refused. What a scoundrel. No, he was right. I was the guilty one. But now I must carry my cross. I want to leave for the north right away and see if I can forget all this. Louise will help you forget Daniel's love." "Forget? Impossible," Augusta said with a gesture of such cold indifference that it could freeze Mount Vesuvius, even during an eruption. "The waltz is over. Let's go for a walk," said Amelia. And they left the room. As soon as they crossed the doorway, a man came out of a nearby study. He had been there before the 2 girls entered the room. It was Louise. The study was the place where Augusta's uncle worked or read. Needing to write a note, Madalena had taken him there, and he was still inside when the 2 young women arrived. When he walked into the small room, his face was pale. He He had just heard the cruelest truth of all. A woman pretending to love him while feeling nothing. A woman who would marry him only to avoid other suitors, and who, even after marrying him, would carry in her heart the memory and love of another man. Louis stood there stunned by what he had overheard. His first thought was to confront the two girls while they were speaking so openly. But he realized that would only make him look ridiculous. When he noticed they had left the room, he ran out of the study, feeling like he couldn't breathe anymore. The two girls, as we said, were already gone. From a distance, Louise caught a glimpse of Augusta's beautiful head rising above the others, like a queen's. He took a few shaky steps, then crossed the large room, unnoticed by everyone, and left the house. For the first half hour, no one noticed he was gone. But eventually, people realized Louise had left. Without even saying goodbye, thought Augusta. How strange. The next day, Louise woke up sick. A serious fever took hold of him and kept him in bed for 8 full days. But he was strong, and his body fought the illness and won. Louise got up and wrote a short note to Augusta. "My dear lady, I heard everything by pure chance. I cannot grant your wish to marry me just to forget. I must say goodbye. Louise." The letter did not shock Augusta deeply, but it hurt her. For the first time in her life, she felt truly humbled. Her conscience began to trouble her, asking quiet but sharp questions. She had always believed herself in control, always the one to decide. Now, she faced a truth she could not ignore, that not everything bends to our will, and that pride, once blind, must eventually see. Chapter 23. Augusta had always turned away those who loved her, acting carelessly and with a proud, stubborn nature. In the end, she faced the consequences of her own mistakes. Louis' letter made her decide never to marry, and she kept that promise to herself. No one should ever try to be like Augusta. She was one of those rare, strange people who could never be a loving wife or a caring mother. Simply put, she was a woman without a single noble quality.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.